Hello, everyone out there. Thanks for signing on today. This is, I believe, our 5th webinar talking about KRB machinery and trying to provide some training tips for the machines that you all use every day. I'll be presenting I'll do the talking part. Scott will do the learning part. So Scott Hartman is our subject matter expert. He is very well versed in all things KRB and certainly all things with KRB machinery. So he'll handle the brunt of it. But today's seminar is all about the BCD-1 Control Head. I lovingly call this machine or this control head Bender Control for Dummies, just to remember it easily. What's great about this particular control head is if you have new operators or inexperienced operators, it is a great way to teach a new operator how to bend steel and how to do it efficiently. It can also be run in the manual mode, which is what Scott will show you. He's going to take us through how to set this machine up, how to get it started, how to calibrate it, and then go through the multiple facets to teach you all of the things that this machine can do. You can add this BCD-1 head to any KRB bender, no matter how old it may be. So it is available as an upgrade to any machine that you have, and you can also actually upgrade the machine when you initially purchase it and add these. We do stock these, as we also try to stock our number 11 benders. So if you need something, please do give us a call. But with that said, I'll turn it over to Scott, and maybe you could go ahead and teach us a little bit about the BCD.
Okay. So like Pat was saying, you can actually replace the Bender Head 2000 with the BCD. Very easy to do. I just have it set up right now. You have 4 9/16 bolts that actually hold it onto the pedestal stand. So you would actually attach, and then basically removing the cable from the old Bender Head 2000, plug the Bender Head cable into the BCD. It's a keyed cable, so it will only plug in one way, which is located at the top, sorry. And then screw it on. Do this with power off, of course. And then if you're using a 2D barcode scanner, that's going to plug into the port. That's the only one open back here. It's an RS-232 COM port. Screw that in to make sure the connection is nice and tight. And then from there, we'll turn the power onto the control head. And as the control head's booting up, it's going to go through a couple loading screens, and then it'll end up popping up to one main menu. So here you have the choice of picking English or Spanish. Of course, I'm going to use English. I'm going to hit 0, and this is going to take us to the main menu of the BCD controller. So this is where, once you pick your language, this is where it always will wake up to. So just going down through the list right now, we have manual input, and I'm going to go down through each section of these menus. Manual input, auto input, set bar size and home, quick bend, and then auto input type. So the first thing we're just going to go over is the manual input. So I'm going to press 1 on the keypad. This will take us to a new screen. So right now, this is where you would actually enter in your shape that you want to run. So you would put your length in, what angle, and what direction you want to bend it in. So let's say we're going to do a 1 foot. We're going to do a 90. I can press 090 for a 90, or I can use the hot function keys, which is F4 180, F3 for 135, F2 for a 90, and F1 for 45. So I press F2 for a 90. I want to bend clockwise, which is 1. Say that I want to put a 2-foot belly in here, 0, 2. We'll do another 90. I'm just going to use the keypad this time, 090. Going to bend same direction, and then we're going to put another 1-foot leg on. So there's the shape itself. It actually shows you as you're entering in the shape that it draws it on the screen for you. So from there, what we can do, so we have basically the shape input right now. basically what I can do now is I can actually change my bar size. If I hit F3, you'll see the bar size changing at the top there. So if we go to 5 bar or maybe even 6 bar. So this is where we can actually change the bar size of the bar size material we're running. So from there, if we wanted to, we can actually save this shape too. Because if you notice over here, F4 files, you have the F3 for the bar size, the F2 run the setup, and then the alternate menu, which I'll go through a little more. F4 files, if I select that, I can actually save the setup. And if you notice over here where there's an asterisk, there's already a shape saved into that location. So what I can do, I can actually overwrite that shape. So if I press F3 to save it, so let's just say we escape out of here and we come back to that manual input and we go back to files. I can actually scroll through and look the files I have. I can actually pick a load a setup. So let's just say you can load this one, press F2, that will load. So we have the functionality to be able to save shapes.
Yeah, and that's a great example of a shape that's maybe more complex than what you do in, day out. So that once you figure out how to make this work properly, you might want to save that setting. So when you have to recall that shape maybe 2 weeks down the road, you don't have to start over and do it all again. It's already in the machine.
And one other thing too about the files also is we actually have standard parts in here also. So if we press F1, this will bring up your standard shape library. So basically if I pick a T1 and I load the setup, I can actually tab down and then just change my dimensions.
Change the leg lengths. Correct. Gotcha. So the basic shape is in there. We can just really adjust it to whatever we need specifically for what we're doing that day.
Yes.
Great. That's time saver.
So then, let's if we go down through, if we already went over bar size, which we're changing just the bar size, whatever we need to run. We'll press F2 to run setup. So it actually shows you the shape right here. All your bends, your bend 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, your last bend. And over here is where you can actually see your bend directions. So the first bend's clockwise, second one's clockwise, third one's clockwise, fourth is counterclockwise, and fifth is counterclockwise. You can actually change the directions. It's more up to the operator, what he feels comfortable with the direction he's bending when he's bending that shape. So I can actually hit the plus minus key, up down arrow, and then tab down to it. Say if I want to change this to a counterclockwise, I'll press F4, and I just change that third bend to a counterclockwise.
So essentially the machine suggested a way in which to make that shape.
Correct.
But maybe because the way you have your bender table set up, or maybe where you like to stand, you'd prefer to bend it in the opposite direction. That's easily reversible.
Exactly.
Great idea.
Basically, it allows the operator to change the shape or the way it's bending exactly how he wants the order and everything.
But then again, if I'm a brand new newbie, I'm pretty smart to start at bend 1 and go to bend 2 and bend 3 and bend 4 and bend 5 and so on. And it's really going to take me through that.
So now, once I actually change my directions, I hit enter. So it'll come up to this screen. And what this screen is a piece counter setup. So what this means is if we're going to say bend max capacity for 6 bar, which I think is number 6s on this machine that we're using right now, I would hit 0, 4. So what that does is when I press enter again, what this does is it gives us another screen to allow us to increase the bend angles by increasing this number, because the more bars you run versus say running 4 versus 1, you might need to bend just a little bit harder. So that's why we have this multi-bar add, which is basically adding a few extra encoder counts to bend a little bit further.
Gotcha. We may be having a slight technical difficulty here, but the idea of the overbend, again, is what he said, is that if indeed you're bending multiple bars depending on the dimension, sometimes you need a little bit of extra overbend so they all get to the proper angle. Yep.
So for this, we're just say we're going to add in 5 extra counts. So then this will take you to the next screen, which is the piece counter setup. So how many total pieces you're running for that tag. So you can put in say 150, and then basically press enter, and this will take you into the next screen. And what on this screen is, you're showing the actual chalk mark for the very first leg, and we measure from the very center of the bend pin out, which is 2 inches, because we're doing, I think, a 4-inch leg, the very first one. And if I tab, I can go to the next leg. So that next leg would be 9 inches. And if I tab again, the next leg would be 1 foot 1. Tab again, I can actually go through the whole shape, make my chalk marks, and then get back to the beginning, and now I'm back at the beginning. And one nice feature about this too is, let's just say we're bending some steel and you get a little bit harder steel, or that very first angle you're bending needs to be a little bit harder. If I just hit my plus or minus key, as you can see encoder counts up here, I can bump that and change that. So that is increasing to bend a little bit harder. If I use the down arrow, that's actually decreasing the angle a little bit. And that's separate for each individual bend. As I tab through, you'll notice I'm at 145. I go to the next one, it says 108, 108. I can change those individually if I have to.
And again, what this drawing, as he's tabbing through those screens, it's really giving the operator visual input on the screen to understand what that shape is going to look like as he proceeds through those steps. Correct. So he gets a lot of feedback along the way, and hopefully it prevents maybe a few errors early on.
So that's, I mean, a lot of the gist of how the actual manual input and the actual running screen, because if I actually scan a tag, it'll actually, when I go to F2 run, it'll take you back into these screens itself. So we're going to hit escape right now. I'm going to go back because I went through run setup. Now I'm going to do the F1 alternate menu. So what this is if like I want to clear this setup right now, if I press F4, it's just going to wipe the shape clean. If I hit F3, this will actually view the setup of the table bender itself. And of course, this is where you would actually set your backup rolls and your backup rams and your homing pin, you know, your bending pin, which home hole to use, and your center mandrel itself. And all your information is shown down here: center pin diameter, 4 inch, bend pin line, hole 3, line 3, hole 1, which is there. And then we actually have the dimension for the ram position itself. And this gives you a very good starting point to start bending steel. Yeah,
when you mentioned the lines, each one of these series of holes, which represent where you put your bend pins, are labeled on your tabletop as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 around the bend. So the operator gets a lot of feedback right away on where to set up those pins. He doesn't have to scratch his head and think about it. It's really showing you exactly how to place the backup pins, how to place the backup rams, and where the all-important bend pin goes.
Correct. So we're going to hit escape, go back, press F1 again. So actually, if I wanted to actually scan a shape right now, there's 2 ways to do it. If I hit F2 from this screen, oops. Okay, we'll have to go back to that one. But if I wanted to reverse the shape, I could reverse the shape. But now this one here, since it's basically the square and the same, it's not going to do that much. If we actually had like a 180 and a 90 and I wanted to do the 180 first or the 180 second, I could just reverse it and flip-flop it.
Yeah, you'd see the difference immediately. Correct. In that case.
So then when we go back to the main menu, we're going to go to auto input. So I press 2.
And now what we're talking about is scanning tags. So the BCD allows you to use actually a scanner to input your shapes through barcoded tags that you might be doing in the front office. Great time saver in the field. And it's just as simple as scanning a tag, just like you'll see.
So I have it on the scan tag function. So I press that and it scanned the shape directly into it.
And now you can see it provided all of that information that Scott was talking about before. It gives you your belly length, your leg lengths, where you're going to start the machine, the order, the clockwise bend versus the counterclockwise. Again, he's got everything he needs to know to bend that part, and he knows what it's supposed to look like. So a real helpful for a new guy.
And just like before, if we want to, we can just press enter. If we zero this out, we actually bypass the multi-bar add screen and actually the counter itself. So now we can basically just tab through and actually get our chalk marks, same as before.
And how do you get back to that setup screen for that particular shape again?
If I hit escape, now if I go back to 1 manual input, the shape's loaded in there.
Okay. And I need to know where now to put my bend pins and whatnot. How do I do
Oh,
that?
the actual view setup?
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
Sorry. So if we were actually, from that screen, you actually do have to back out.
Okay.
So one thing you could actually do is press 3 and then F3 view setup.
And there we go. So that's how I know how to set everything up, get the pins in the right position, and come out with the right shape.
Correct.
Great.
So just speaking of the actual from the menu, set bar size and home. So menu 3, this is where you can also set the bar size from, and it tells you all your information and your backup roll, your diameter, what you're bending around, your backup RAM, everything, your center pin, all this is located on here. So this is just kind of just giving you the brief information, what you need. So if I hit my up arrow key, I can go to 6 bar or 3 bar, and you can see the information changing down there.
So sort of a summary page of everything that's about to happen.
Correct. And like if I hit F3, it views the setup and I can go back. So let's go back. So the one thing about this screen is sometimes when you switch bar sizes, you have to go to a different home location. So what is nice about this is you actually would basically move your homing pins. Say if you're on home position 1 and you need to go to home position 2, you move your homing pins on our number 11, or if it's a 14, you actually change the switch from 1 to 2. And then from there, tab to where it says home clockwise, or if you want to go to home counterclockwise, you would press the foot pedal and that will take it to home automatically.
Yep, and just like all the control heads, you have an arrow that the green button represents a clockwise rotation of the tabletop. So that's the way it's going to move on the next shape. If the blue button was illuminated, it would be counterclockwise, and you'll find that common on all of our control heads.
Correct. So then the next menu, number 4, is quick bend. This is for basically no frills. All we're doing is putting in what angle I want to bend and what direction.
So Scott, this would be very similar to the screen that they would use on a Bender Head 2000.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's all you're doing.
So if you have a veteran, a guy who really knows how to bend steel, he's probably going to spend most of his time in this screen. But guess what? We've got the best of both worlds with this control.
So I have a 90 with I'm bending clockwise, and if I want to put another 90 in, whoops. And then direction 2 would be counterclockwise. And then from here, if I press enter, I can set up how many bars I want to do per cycle, your total pieces, but we're not going to use that. So I'm just going to hit enter. So right now, like I said, it's very basically the angle you're going to bend and what direction, and that's it. So from here, you just press the foot pedal to bend a 90.
So in this case, it's not going to bother showing you setup. It's not going to show you any of that other stuff because, again, this assumes that you're pretty darn familiar with this machine and you know how to bend steel. So it's just giving you the very basics. You can skip all those extra steps.
Yeah, if you don't need to know, if you know how to measure out the chalk marks and everything and you have your tag information, you can use this screen to punch in your angle and go.
So really no downside from operator to operator. Great.
So what I'm going to show now is just a little bit to help with troubleshooting. These are a little bit of a hidden screen. 08 on the keypad will bring up this hardware test screen, which is kind of nice for troubleshooting. It can tell us basically if we're seeing the home switch when the bender needs to return home to stop. It can actually see the foot switch input and this tack pulse when it's receiving tack pulses from the encoder, which is basically how you get your angles. That will flicker on and off for us. And then I can also do another test, or if I would actually use the up arrow, down arrow key, I can make the turntable go by holding that and then pressing the foot pedal, just to make sure it's going the directions you need.
So the reasons these show off is we're not actually running the machine, but if you were making sure that circuit was functional, that would trip.
It's a nice little screen just to be able to just do a real quick check. Just let's say we're making sure that the machine is operating properly and we're seeing all of our inputs.
Great.
So the next hidden screen, which this will get into a little bit where we have to get into for calibration and everything, but I'll just kind of go down through the list of everything. 09. So this you can actually password protect. If you remember, put a password in and remember it, you can, every time you come in here, you have to enter that password because these options will be locked. So the first item down is the actual bender type. And we have all of our benders in here. We have our 11 hydraulic mechanical, 14 mechanical, 18, and a number 8 when we used to produce the number 8. So we're using the number 11 on this one, so we're just going to leave it set there. The encoder type, it's just more of a tag to say what kind of encoder's in there. It doesn't really do anything functionally to the controller itself. It's just more of a say, oh, well, at least I know this one's an old mechanical encoder versus an old photo encoder.
So that might come in handy if you were troubleshooting and need to call us for a new encoder. You know it's type 651?
Not really.
Okay.
Most of the time we have to know the encoder model number and everything.
Gotcha.
Station ID was used for an old network system, which we don't use anymore. English is the unit type is English or metric, so you can use it in metric. Then the return time delay, which we always have these set at when we test the machines and everything, is basically the time response from when the bend is complete till it returns home, and we try to keep that set at 0.3 because you don't want that pause too long in between. And then of course you have the standard shape set up to where it's CRSI standard, or you have the British standards. And then below that, this is where this screen comes into play that's important, because this is where you actually will calibrate the machine. So we go to calibrate, we press enter, take us to a new screen.
Yeah, and this, by the way, whenever you set up a new BCD head, it's really important that you go through and calibrate the different bar sizes, because this controller might act a little differently on the bender we have today compared to the one you have in your shop, and that could be slightly different voltages coming in, older machine, you never know. So you always want to calibrate all the bar sizes that you're going to be using when you first set up that control unit. And
remember too that if you calibrate this BCD for, say, your number 11 that's there for 5 years, it needs to stay with that. You can't just pick it up and move it to another bender.
Well, you can, but you'd have to
recalibrate everything. Correct.
Right. And I do have guys who will just buy one of these and use them on multiple benders in the shop to teach new employees.
Yep.
And that always comes up. You know, hey, if you move it, you got to go through the calibration again.
So right here is basically the bar size. I can select what bar size we're working on. So let's say we're on 5. And actually, this is one little thing too, is like, say you want to start every bend out counterclockwise versus clockwise, because we're starting right now everything clockwise. I can actually change that function that where everything will start counterclockwise. But we're going to leave it at clockwise. And then what you have then, the table speed, that was for a past revamp that it's not used anymore. But where we're looking at here is the degrees. This is where the calibration itself starts. So what you have is you have 3 calibration points for each direction. So you have a 5-degree clockwise, 90-degree clockwise, 180 clockwise, 5-degree counterclockwise, 90 counterclockwise, 180 counterclockwise. So you have to calibrate each of those points for the clockwise direction and the counterclockwise direction. And the easy way that I found to do this, some people try to do it from the screen, but you're back and forth, back and out. The easiest way to do it is tab down to where it says test. Press enter, and it'll take you to a new screen. So what I can do is I'm on the 5-degree calibration setting right now. I can tab down to counts, or actually use my up arrow key. Oops, sorry, tab. Up arrow key, I can increase those counts and then do a test bend.
So the higher this count number goes, the larger degree of the bend.
Yes.
And again, we always have to overbend in order to achieve the degree bend that we're looking for. So for instance, he might have to go to 15 counts to get a 5-degree bend.
And so once I'm basically think I'm close, or I just do it, you tab down to test bend, press your foot pedal, it will make one bend 5-degree counterclockwise. And if you need to adjust accordingly, and then of course you can tab back up and add more to that if you have.
And so at this point, you'd actually have a piece of bar in the machine, and you'd have a protractor, and you'd say, I want a perfect 5-degree bend. I now that's at 17 counts, and that's a calibration point.
And like I said, we can go through every calibration point here. And that's how I found the easiest way to do it. And then if we escape back out, I can change my bar size, tab back down, and do test again. Now I'm working with 6 bar, you'll see at the top.
And then we would go through that same process again for 5 degrees, for 90 degrees, and then 180. both clockwise and counterclockwise. And if you take the time to go through all that, it's really going to operate a whole lot better for you. So I highly recommend it. I often run into it where people can't understand why they can't get the right degrees. Every time it's because they're not calibrating the control head.
So just this is basically down below here is where we actually have all of our information set up for the center pin, the bend radius, the bend pin line, the bend pin hole, and then basically your backups and everything. That's how we basically get that setup sheet that you can see, you know, the actual view setup. So I'm showing you the view setup again. I might have to.
While he's resetting that, one of the things I want you to think about with calibration is that it would not be unusual for me to have a perfect 90-degree bend today. And then next week I put another piece of 4-bar in and suddenly it's not coming out to 90 degrees. It's not the machine, it's the rebar. So understand that in many cases you'll actually, as you switch bundles of bar, you will see that they'll be a little off. Again, it's not the machine, it's actually the bar, because we are dealing with essentially junk steel. It's rebar, it's ground up washing machines and cars and all sorts of stuff. So you will see some differential between different batches of rebar on those degree bends, and you may have to add a count. And I think Scott's going to talk about that a little later.
Well, one thing I did want to address too is it's kind of hard for us to do right now since we're not really running the machine. But this controller will also tell you in the run screen itself when you're running the shape. Let me just throw something in here quick. Let's just load this. When you're actually running the shape, let's say the bender was not sitting at home when you first started the bend, it will actually give you an error message down below here saying home switch not found at start. It will actually tell you if it's not found on return. It will tell you basically if you're not getting encoder pulses. So it does have some smarts built into it and some diagnostics to let you know what's going on with it.
Give me an example of, you know, what you do if you get that message, home not found.
Home not found, first off, what I would do is manually bump it back to make sure my pins are at 12 o'clock to make sure I am starting at home. Try it again. If it still gives you that error message, then the first thing I would look at would be the home switch on. So,
you know, essentially that encoder for home is at the 12 o'clock position, sort of in front of the operator.
On the 11 it is,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Scott, what else? Are there any other common error messages that you see with the BCD head that folks should be prepared to
what I've noticed what I've heard before is they press the foot pedal, but nothing happens.
Okay.
Sometimes what happens is whoever was using the bender last locked the foot pedal down and they didn't reset the foot pedal itself.
So the e-stop is on.
Correct.
Okay.
So reset that, restart the machine, make sure everything's good.
How about tack failure? That's another one that I hear about.
Tack failure will show up when there's no movement at all.
Okay.
It's looking for encoder pulses, but the turntable never moves to create encoder pulses.
So everything's really tied into those encoders.
Correct.
Typically for the errors.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a great place to look if you have that kind of issue. Of course, you can always call KRB and you might get Scott on the phone if you're really lucky, but you'll get somebody from service and we can walk you through these things. In most cases, when we have issues with either the BCD head or the number 11 table bender, it's an e-stop, it's a basic encoder issue. There's rarely anything seriously wrong with the machine. So look for the simple stuff first would be my message on that.
I agree.
Do you have any other thoughts on this head that you think everybody ought to know?
No, I think we basically covered pretty much everything.
Okay, well, that's great. So we're getting ready to wrap this up, but we are very interested in any questions that the viewers may have. You can either, I guess, type that in generally. I think we're also, if you're set up for the audio, you may be able to speak that question, but we'd love to hear if anybody has any questions right now that we can answer. Do you have any questions, John? Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions currently, and I'll stall a little bit in case one comes in. But I would like you to know that we record these webinars, and they are available to you if you dial into the KRB Online Service Center. you can reboot these anytime you want. So they are available. I would also encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. We've got a great deal of instructional content in there, as well as more information about the machinery that we sell. We are constantly adding content to both the online service center as well as that YouTube channel. So particularly if you need something on a weekend and you can't get a hold of anybody, that's a great place to check. With that, we thank you for taking time out. John, do we have any other questions?
Okay.
I would very much like to thank Scott for taking time out to do this with us. Again, Todd Falk is our marketing manager maven behind the camera who makes it all happen. And we've got John Mahale who handles our technical issues. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for dialing in, and look for us again next quarter. And we'll have another instructional video for you. Thank you. Appreciate it.